Welcome back, Dragons fan, to another episode of the Dirt Podcast. We're up here in the suites at Dare Ballpark, and we are joined today by Dragons outfielder Blake Dunn. Blake, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit, we're a few weeks into the 2023 season here, your first time in Dayton. I know we played in Daytona last year, but give us your kind of overall impression of what it's like playing for the Dragons and what it's like playing here in front of the crowd in Dayton.
It's been awesome so far. I mean, just having all the fans that come to the games and just kind of switching up the atmosphere and being able to kind of get that like crowd fan engagement and kind of have the adrenaline pumping a little bit extra outside of just like what's going on in the game, and just being able to go out there and play in front of the fans, do some stuff that's exciting, get the crowd loud. It's been pretty cool so far. So,
does it actually make a difference, like in both like dugout, locker room, and then performance on field when you have like a consistent crowd to play in front of every night?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously the main goal is to like perform well and win the games, but when you are in the dugout and on the field and stuff's going on in the game, and especially when you get stuff that's kind of going back to back, and like you get like 2 or 3 in a row, like extra base hits, like doubles, and then you have that homer and the crowd just kind of explodes. Like you don't get that rush of adrenaline, I guess, when there's not like a packed stadium. So it definitely makes a difference having like a good crowd at the games to support you. And when we're on the field, like we can feel it too. So it's pretty cool.
So Andrew and I were kind of joking. You're from a town called Saugatuck, Michigan, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people probably around here that have heard about it more of like kind of a resort town, right? You want to go up and hang out by the lake.
Yeah.
But as far as the size of a town, not that big of an area, right? High school obviously was probably fairly small too, right?
Yeah, I think I had one of the bigger graduating classes in like recent memory, at least for me, and I think my graduating class was like 86 or 87 people. So it is a pretty small school.
That was like record setting for
Saugatuck. I think a couple classes later beat me maybe with like 90 kids, but it's a pretty small school.
Booming metropolis there, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, for someone who is interested and likes athletics, like there's a lot of merit to, I think, growing up and going to a smaller school, because you get the opportunity to play more sports and play more playing time than, someone who goes to a school that has 800 people in your class too. And I reading up on your stuff, you definitely took advantage of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's pros and cons to like big small school, like that whole debate. Like you can go either way. It's just kind of how you handle it and how you go at it is kind of the difference in for me. Like when I grew up in a small school, like my dad was a football coach and the athletic director, so like I was around sports all the way from when I was like 6 years old in elementary school. I would come over from the elementary school on the bus, do my homework in his office before I'd go out to the football field, and then I was around all the guys like for the rest of the day. So I grew up around sports, and that was just kind of part of the whole 4-sport athlete like thing that I did in high school. Was like that was just who I was and how I was raised, and being at a small school like helped that, obviously, being able to play 4 sports. And sometimes when you're at the bigger schools, like you want to make the varsity team in one sport. So sometimes like those kids feel like they need to like specialize in 1 or 2 sports in order to do that, which like I understand that, but I don't think I'd be the person I am today if I didn't play those 4 sports. And just kind of having that all around athleticism and competitiveness and drive and stuff that kind of built me into who I am.
It's a good point. Like nowadays, I think you see a lot more kids, especially where it's like they'll pick a sport real early on, and that's what they stick with, and they play it like 4 seasons a year.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I play basketball, so you go play basketball, in the summer, you play it in the fall, you play winter ball, you play AAU, you do all this kind of stuff. As far as like when you were growing up, so when you grew up around sports, what did 12-year-old Blake want to do? Was this like, were you always baseball ahead of everything else? Or I know you were great at football and track and things like that. What was like early on your sport of choice, and then what did it like morph into?
If you're asking 12-year-old Blake, I probably would have wanted to play NFL football or something, just because I was on a football field when I was 6 years old, like I said, or maybe even younger, because my dad was a coach at West Ottawa before he came over to Saugatuck. So I was around football my entire life, and so 12-year-old Blake probably would have said football. But once I started like getting older and playing some travel sports, like I played travel basketball a little bit for a couple of years, but the majority of my travel career was spent in travel baseball, and that was kind of what me and my parents, like that's kind of what we put our time into, was that traveling around the country or whatever to go to different tournaments and play on different teams and stuff like that. So as I got older, probably towards like middle school, like kind of 7th, 8th, 9th grade, and once I got into 9th grade in high school, just that was kind of when I was like, okay, baseball's probably going to be my chance to do something in. And like my original goal was just to get to, like, I wanted to be a Division I athlete. And as I continued to get older and play in college, I kind of developed a little bit more baseball wise, and then started, once I got there, like set a new goal of wanting to become a professional athlete with baseball. And so it just kind of through time developed into where I'm at now.
So for the listeners at home, just to kind of reiterate, you played football in the fall, basketball in the winter, and then baseball and track in the spring.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm trying to think of the things I tried to do and what I didn't, get away with in high school. It's like baseball is like when you're playing baseball, you focus 100% on baseball, but you had to do a little bit of both. And there was an interesting story we heard about where you actually were playing a game, went over and did some track, and then came back to the game?
Yeah,
tell us about that one.
I'm surprised you guys heard about that, but that was at
we hear about everything.
That was
great intel.
That was at we were at Bloomingdale, and it just so happened it didn't happen very often where we had baseball and track on the same day.
It's because your dad was the AD, right?
Yeah, so that helped. He was able to schedule some stuff so that I could do both, but we were at Bloomingdale, and the baseball field was right next to the football field, which had the track around it, obviously. And so I started the day playing baseball, and I think I made it through like 5 or 6 innings, ended up having to leave, go run my 4 events in track, and then came back and played in the doubleheader the next game of that baseball game at Bloomingdale. So that was kind of, I think I was playing baseball with my track uniform on underneath my jersey, went over, took my baseball uniform off, and then ran and then threw my uniform back on and went back onto the field. But yeah, that was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool experience.
Trying to remember which pair of cleats you should be wearing at any given time.
Yeah. It was pretty hard. It's pretty hard to mess up baseball and track cleats. If I were to do that, I'd be in a world of trouble.
Yeah. So you mentioned, right, you get off to college, you're now a Division I athlete. And that's right around the time that COVID hits, right? So the entire world, everybody's got a story about the year that COVID killed, right? So you lost your 2020 season playing college ball, and you come back what ultimately became your final season in 2021 and dealt with some injuries. So you kind of go from, hey, I go off the field in 2019 thinking I got 2 probably years left of this before hopefully I can make my dream of going pro, now to like, I've only got 100 at bats maybe that I get in my last year. How did you approach that? Like, did you feel ready? Did you feel like you needed more time? Like, how did you kind of come through COVID?
Well, yeah, I guess the 2020 season with COVID, that was my draft year. Like I was a junior, so I was eligible that year to go in the draft, and I had played in the Cape the summer before that. So that was obviously going into my junior year, like my goal was to get drafted, and obviously before COVID hit, like I was expecting 40 rounds of the draft, whatever, and having a chance at some point to hopefully become a professional baseball player at that point. And then we were 2 or 3 weeks into the season, and all like the rumors of like COVID like started to pop up on social media and everything, and we were all like, what's going on? Like, this is crazy, like everything's shutting down, like are the United States, like, are we gonna shut down? And then we were in the locker room getting ready, I think, to go to Butler maybe, because we had just got back from Louisville, and then everything just we just got back from our spring break trip, and we were getting ready to kind of start our conference season. Butler was like the week before that, I think, and then all of a sudden like our season was just done, and we were all just kind of like in shock. We were like, what, like, are we done for like a couple of weeks? Like, are we going to be playing like at the end of the year? Like, what's going on? And then more time went by, and we're all at home, locked in our houses, and it was pretty crazy. And then finally we come out of that, and like you said, I broke my hamate the first game of the season my senior year, and missed like a month and a half, I think. it was funny because the first like 2 weeks that I came back from that injury, I wasn't swinging in the games. I was bunting only, like even all the way up to 3 strikes. Like
Still hurt?
Yeah, it wasn't my hand, it was my wrist. So like my hand was fine, but just the force of swinging and like the force on my wrist, like it was causing pain. But like I knew what was like at stake that year with like wanting to get drafted, wanting to get into pro ball, and me and my coach had like talked a little bit like once I was like getting out of like ready to play again, and we were just like, I think I can play, like I think I can swing. And BP, like the day of the first game, like felt fine, and then all of a sudden like I took a swing in a game and I was like, well, I can't really replicate this in practice, and it was still kind of hurting. So then I told him, I was like, I can play defense and everything, but I just can't really swing right now, and he was fine with it. So I just bunted all the way up until 3 strikes. I don't think I ever got a single hit for the 2 weeks that I was doing that. And then it was kind of weird. It was the week before we went to Toledo. He gave us 2 off days. Normally we get Monday off. It was just like mandatory from the NCAA. And then we had Tuesday off as well. And then I came back Wednesday, and all of a sudden like my wrist just stopped hurting, and I was able to swing and had like 3 home runs, I think, at Toledo that week, and started to kind of feel like myself again. And then a couple more weeks went by and the season was done, so I didn't really have a lot of time to do much that year. But just it was that whole year and a half was a pretty crazy process for sure.
Yeah, so you get to the end of the year, and then the draft comes up. You end up going in the 15th round, which is pretty good because the draft had gotten considerably shortened that year.
Yeah.
So were you fairly confident going in? Were you kind of like nail biting when it got down towards the end? Like where were you at? Did you have an idea of what was going to happen?
I mean, I didn't have I came and did a workout, like a pre-draft workout with the Reds, but I going into the draft, I honestly had no idea what was going to happen. The year before that in the COVID draft, I had gotten calls during that draft and ended up going back to school. And so like going into that last draft, I was kind of just hoping that somebody would give me a chance and believe in me the way that I believe in myself, and the Reds ended up doing that. And it was just kind of, as each round went by, you obviously get a little bit more nervous, and you're just kind of like, okay, just somebody give me a call, please. So you're just like kind of, it's definitely a nervous moment. But once that, like, my agent called me and said the Reds were going to take me in the 15th, it was just a huge, like, kind of sigh of relief, weight off my shoulders, just to be able to have that whole entire year and a half worth of build up between the COVID season and then the COVID 5-round draft and then the injury in the first game of the year, my senior year, and just being able to finally take a step back and breathe a little bit. It was a huge, like, joyful moment between me and my family and my girlfriend that were at the house with me during draft day. So that was definitely a moment I won't ever forget.
So we hear a lot of times about, like, you know, draft day is very special to you, but there's got to be stuff that happens, like, in between your agent calling you and saying the Reds are going to take you in the 15th round, and then, like, the next time we see you, which is showing up, like, at a spring training or, you know, for minor league baseball or something. What happens in that meantime for a player, like, after they call your name and you actually get drafted, to when does, like, the work start, or who contacts you next?
Normally it's just, like, I mean, for me it was the draft. I don't remember the exact day, but I think I maybe had like 4 or 5 days after the draft to kind of pack my stuff up, get ready, and then I was flying out to Arizona for draft camp with all the other guys. So yeah, it's a pretty quick turnaround. So I think maybe like the day that the draft happened, once I was like picked, like some of my other like family members came over and we kind of just like had a get together after that, and then the next day like I was back to baseball activities, like because I knew like yesterday was awesome, but I have to be ready to play once I head out to Arizona.
Don't
so
screw it up at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So
Is there a little bit of your family and, like, the way this works? I know the Reds aren't right in your backyard of where you grew up, but they're relatively close. It's not like you got drafted by a team that's on the West Coast or something. Is there a little bit of, like, I like the fact that maybe my family can come and, you know, hopefully one day, like, support me and come watch me play versus you being 2,000 miles away?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, last week we were in West Michigan, and my parents and family members and staff members from high school and football coaches from high school. Like every single day there was different people that were coming to the games that I wasn't expecting to see. So like it was definitely pretty sweet to have that feeling of playing in front of so many people that I knew last week, and hopefully someday like I'll be able to have that same feeling, and it will definitely be 10 times more of a emotional kind of joyful moment whenever that does happen. But there's definitely like a thought to that with being close to home, and I think Cincinnati might be like a 4.5, 6, somewhere between like 4 and 6 hour drive from where my parents live. So that's definitely like a thought that goes through my head, I would say. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So 2021 goes by, and then you get into 2022 season. You're reporting to Daytona, the low A team, and tell us, that's kind of your first full year. What are some of the things that you notice kind of right off the bat? It's like the differences from the average lay person who maybe has played high school or played a little bit of college ball to the pros. Like, what's the biggest adjustment that you have to make as a player?
Well, the hardest thing is just like dealing with the everyday grind of like coming to the ballpark, and some days you're going to feel good, some days you're not going to feel good, but it doesn't matter because you got to be able to get yourself ready by 6:30, 7 o'clock, whatever game time is, to be able to go out there and play and perform, because that's what matters. Like you might not be feeling the greatest, but you still got to go out there and do what you can to help the team win. And also just being able to deal with adversity, because a lot of times like in high school and sometimes even college, like you don't necessarily deal with true adversity. Like you might go through a slump or whatever, but really being in like pressure moments and stuff like that, like day in and day out, where like it's really like kind of on your mind 24/7. Like in college, like you have 4 games a week if you play a midweek, so you have 3 other days where you have like mentally time to reset, whereas baseball with here is every single day. So you gotta be able to handle like the physical and the emotional side of being able to always be like focused and locked in, and being able to kind of, once you step out of the stadium, step away from baseball mentally, like so that you're not just totally beating yourself up 24/7, and that way once you come back to the park the next day, like you're not worried about or thinking about what happened the night before, even if it was a good game, because it's just a new day. So that's the biggest thing, is just being able to mentally always be able to reset when you need to and stay focused on the task at hand.
What's that look like for you when you're out of here? How do you decompress from the rigors of playing baseball when you're not around?
Me personally, I play a lot of video games. So like when I go home, I'm just like I call my girlfriend, talk to my parents, and just kind of do whatever, like play MLB The Show, play COD, do whatever.
Wait, so you leave to forget about baseball and you play the show?
Yeah, but it's a little it's different because I'm just playing a video game.
It's all right, yeah.
I'm working on my hand-eye coordination and just kind of
your pitch timing.
Yeah, exactly.
Nailed it.
Well, yeah, I've never really thought about that before, right? I guess in high school and in college, you have other parts to your life. Like you have classes, you have friends, you have things you're doing, where when you get drafted and you're in like a city that you don't know and you're like sleeping and breathing baseball, like I think you're right. There's less to take your mind off of it if you're going through a slump, or you don't have a separation, I guess. I've never really put that 2 and 2 together. You just think of more like the competition goes up and it's harder, but yeah, it's a whole different lifestyle.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of like what I was saying. You just got to be able to have something that allows you to kind of step away and reset, and that way you're able to come back the next day, whether you went 4 for 4 or 0 for 4, and just kind of be neutral and centered on whatever the next day is going to be.
So every team you've played for probably has something that like makes it unique or makes it memorable, like that group of guys that you played with. What is it about this team? Is there something that sticks out in your mind to this team where you're like, this is what I'll remember about like the 2023 Dragons?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for us so far, like we obviously have kind of gotten off to a slow start with the wins, and we keep we're in. I mean, I maybe 1 or 2 or 3 games I felt like we were kind of out of it, like with like a big like run differential or whatever, but we're in a lot of these games, and I really think that we're just one pitch away from winning those games, and that's one thing that I've noticed so far, is that whether we're down or up, like the attitude in the clubhouse is always just kind of like keep going, keep fighting. And I think that's like really important with a team because obviously the hope is that a lot of these guys end up getting to the big league level and we're able to help the big league team win a championship. And that's what a team needs is like you have to have that never quit mentality. And that way, like, because 162 games is a long season. I don't know how many we play. I think it's like 130 or something, but like it's a long season and you have to have that attitude of like never giving up to be able to go out there every single day and help win a championship at the big league level.
Where do you think that comes from? Is that coming from just the players themselves in a great mix? Is that coming from the coaching staff? Is that like a Reds thing? Like, do you have a sense of what's been fostering that environment? Because that sounds awesome.
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think the Reds have kind of pushed that mentality, and I think they're also, I would assume that they're also looking for those type of guys as well. Like you can't really fake that type of stuff in a person, and I feel like we have a lot of guys in our clubhouse that are really genuine and have that attitude of kind of going out there and they want to win. Like they're more focused on helping the team win and more focused on the team than themselves, which in turn is allowing us to kind of not worry about what's happening on the field and just go out there and just like do what we can to win, and whether we're up by 5 or down by 5, like just trying to continue to keep pushing and keep fighting.
It's probably not as easy as it sounds, though, because at the level of minor league baseball that you guys are all at, while you want to win, everybody wants to win.
Yeah.
There's also a really distinct focus on individual improvement and working on certain skills. And sometimes while working on a skill, you might not necessarily be the best version of yourself because you're trying to work on something.
Yeah.
Have you had any instances like that, or where you're trying to work on something at the same time as trying to go out there and play and compete, or do you sort of put that out of your mind when it's game time?
I think it's you have to have two different focuses of like pre-game, like when you're on BP in the cages doing defensive work, like that's your time to work on yourself as a baseball player and attack any like stuff that you've been working on trying to make yourself a better player. And then once like first pitch comes around, like that you have to have a totally separate attitude in being able to flip that switch and kind of not focused on mechanics, not focused on what you were working on at 4 o'clock because now it's 7 o'clock, and if you're worried about what happened 3 hours ago, you're not going to be mentally ready to play in the box and compete. And so like that for me, like that's the difference, and I could probably say the same for a lot of the other guys, is being able to differentiate practice and working on what we need to work on early in the day, and then once first pitch in the game starts, like we're in the box ready to compete and we're trying to find a way to win.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting way to look at it, because I think the average fan probably looks at it and, you know, they'll hear and they know like, oh, these guys are working on something or they're trying to build up. So it's like, I mean, I think that's generally why it's kind of a cool environment, because people know that, you know, hey, even if you guys don't have as many wins as everyone would like, this isn't the major leagues, right? At this level, it's like guys are working to get to that point. So I think there's, we'll get them next time mentality, but understanding that you guys are like, yeah, hey, that's what we worked on at batting practice. But when it's here, it's like, we're going into muscle memory mode, and it's like hopefully I've, you know, built up some of those pathways and created some new habits or got rid of some old habits to compete a little bit better. But yeah, I could see where, yeah, if you're thinking about exactly what your left hand is doing while you're in the box trying to face a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, that's probably not the best use of your brain power, right?
No, definitely not.
Got it.
So I have one last question for you. So you have had a short career so far, obviously, at the highest level and working your way up. But what's been your favorite memory so far from like draft day to now that like sticks out in your mind?
Honestly, for me, like I've been hurt a lot so far in my career. Like with like in 2021, like I had a broken nose like a week and a half into getting out of draft camp. I had a forearm strain in spring training last year that then I went out and played 3 weeks once I came back from that, and I collided with Ruben and I separated my shoulder, so I was out for another 3 months after that. And I would say for me, like the most like memories that I've been able to create on the field is just like going out there and just kind of enjoying being on the field and not like like a lot of times, like we put so much pressure on ourselves to perform and stuff like that, and we kind of lose the sight of like going out there and having fun and just kind of enjoying playing a kid's game. Like our job is to play baseball, and not a lot of people can say that. And so for me, like I just kind of like look at every single day as like it's just like almost like a blessing to be able to stay on the field and be healthy. And so like for me so far in my career, like that's been the coolest part for me, is just being able to play like and hopefully stay healthy and play a full season and just kind of go out there and enjoy baseball and not worry about what might happen or what could happen in the future, and just kind of, I don't know, just kind of enjoy playing, because it's just it can be gone so quickly, whether through injury or whatever might happen in your career. Like it could be gone in a snap of the fingers. So for me, it's just kind of have fun, just enjoy having fun playing the game.
Well, we've had fun watching you so far, and I think fans have too, and we're looking forward to 100 plus more to go this season, and we got a lot of baseball to play, but we appreciate you stopping by. Thanks, Blake.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Blake. Have a good one.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.